there's a lot of opportunity here and a lot of business opportunity besides myself for our other locals. This location is out of town. The property is undeveloped behind us, and the entire neighborhood could use a boost. And I guess I should probably get to the points of asking for the relief. So I did obtain the license through the Oregon Health Authority, and that license was issued based off of all their zoning requirements. I'd come down to the city, I got the maps, I sent those all in with my application. The church does not have a school in it, and they don't have a large congregation, and they don't really have any youth programs or summer school or anything like that. So I did, because that was there, put on my operating hours that we wouldn't be open past 7 o'clock at night, and then we'd be closed on Sundays. And if that parking wanted to be used by that church, it would also be available. So that was all addressed with my application to the state. And they approved that location. So I wanted to go back to the criteria stating for a business that would not be open to, or would be open to the general public if there wasn't an age restriction. Well, besides there being an age restriction, it's not open to the general public. You have to have an Oregon State license to purchase marijuana from a medical marijuana facility. So as far as that criteria goes, it is not open to the general public. So I am asking for relief. I do know we could roll Measure 91 out reputably, and I do want to take this from medical into recreational. And I think that's beneficial for everyone involved, the city, the entrepreneurs. I want to have a retail storefront, but my main goal is to get in local products, sustainably grown organic products, and market Southern Oregon and be a wholesale and retail distributor of these products. So I want to work with other entrepreneurs to establish their business with the timeline that's been laid out by the OLCC. They've actually done a good job organizing when each one of these licenses is going to come out, because there is a amount of time to establish each one of these businesses, whether it's from packaging or labeling. But with that timeline, I really think that we can bring a lot of people through this one address and license, process, package, and distribute from here, and actually give a lot more people opportunity than with the sites that are available within the city that were on the map. There's also, I know we talked about preemptive language as far as the zoning goes and everything. My license from the Oregon Health Authority was issued before they started on the HB 3400, and so I'm supposed to be governed under the rules that were posted before January 28th, and so that being new would apply once the OLCC licensing came in. But as far as the Oregon Health Authority, I've met all the requirements through the state. So really, I am just asking for relief. You have the power to help me and to help other entrepreneurs, but the decision is ultimately yours. The property right now, I don't want to change that ordinance. It serves a purpose. And I really didn't know about it when I leased this property, or I would have done better due diligence, got another property. But because it is undeveloped, and from what I understand, and I'm sorry because I know you mentioned that I needed to have enough evidence to show you this evening, but I don't. But I've seen different things where the city's actually parked the trucks for the tree service and different public works on that property. And I believe ultimately it was partitioned to become a storage unit. So I think the previous people that have tried to develop that property have both looked at commercial use. So I do question the highest and best use for the property. And I know in the hearing, that was addressed, that it could be built up residential and probably be pretty feasible for a developer to make a profit. But it is a really low income neighborhood, and there is only one entrance and exit to there. So if you did put in, 9 apartments in there, you'd be creating a really low income condensed area that probably isn't best suited for public safety. I guess besides that, the reason that you can grant the relief is because there are negative effects for the denial of prolonged business. So I believe, even though the variance doesn't apply, that is the reasoning council would be able to provide relief. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for your presentation. Any clarifying questions from the applicant? Mark?
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Even though this has been used for commercial use is not the issue. It's the adult use that is the issue, and that's really why we're here. It's not whether or not we're going to park trucks on there, or do a storage unit. We're talking about an age-specific business that will not allow minors in the business, which constitutes an adult use. So I'm curious. I've driven by the property several times. I've got a property out in Rogue River that I do business with. So I see the green cross on there. The green. What is that? What does that signify? Can you tell me what that signifies?
The green cross is the symbol for medical marijuana, but the shop you're seeing isn't mine. I don't have any signage or anything up.
So that's not your that's not your shop?
No, sir. You're seeing another dispensary out there.
Okay, good. I'm glad I got that cleared up.
Yeah.
Is that outside the city? It is outside, because it says open for business. I'm like, you're open for business? Okay.
No, so
I'm glad I got that cleared up.
So yeah, that's not me. We have not
Scratch
opened
that
for business,
question
and
off.
we've hung up no signage.
So I'm interested. The OHA approved your license, said that you'd met all the criteria. Do they not take into account the city's requirements at all?
They don't. They lay out their own zoning requirements.
So does it matter if we have a problem with it next to a daycare, next to a school? I mean, do they have those same criteria? School, daycare, that type of thing?
Yes. So they put up 1,000 feet buffers, 1,000-foot buffers for all of those. The only thing, and now HB 2400's gone to it as well, is it cannot be in a residential zone.
What about the residential zone requirements, or restrictions, I should say, on the original license that you obtained? What are the requirements there?
Okay, so it just, on the original license, it cannot be in a residential zone.
But it can be right next to it.
Yes. So, and then just to clarify, that lot that parks the trucks and the, that isn't my lot. That's the residential lot that's behind me that's undeveloped.
Gotcha.
So it's being used for commercial, even though it's residential.
Yeah. Yeah, and you did say that this was for, that you're looking at this because it's a medical use, but you are indeed intending to go recreational as soon as the law allows that. I'm looking at a really big operation, especially if your plan is to go wholesale. I mean, we got people from California to Wyoming to New York. I mean, and they're going to come. You're going to have restrictions. They have restrictions now.
Yes, we can't go.
I know you can't
line.
traffic, but
Yeah.
it happens all the time. Yeah, so I'm just saying they will get around that. You're going to have that happen. It happens now. The amount, in fact, Colorado's getting sued from Wyoming because of the trafficking that's going on through there. So can we
bring it back to Grants Pass?
Okay, I'm saying when we're looking at a small little, nice little, quaint little shop that's going to do some marijuana business, it's not really, in my mind, that is it in your mind that that's not going to happen? Do you have safeguards that would prevent that from happening, or can you tell me about that?
Okay, yes, so the safeguards that have been put in place are a full seed-to-sale tracking system. So everything that is brought into the dispensary has already been processed, batched, and lab tested. And a batch is up to 10 pounds of marijuana that's been sealed and considered the same strain with the same test results in it. And there's a seed-to-sale tracking.
Let me stop you
on
there
that.
if I could.
Yeah.
We're getting off the subject. We're talking about
Land
adult
use.
And
That's what
we're
it
starting
is.
to get into some of the nuances of the
So
laws that aren't even finalized yet coming from our
Okay.
state. So
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing me
Thank
back
you.
home. Thank you. That's it. I thank you very much.
Dan,
When you came in to apply, you went through the Oregon Health Authority. I guess that was your first stop, correct?
Jackson County Sheriff was to get fingerprinted.
A little bit closer to the
Oh,
mic.
sorry.
I know.
Yeah, I had to get fingerprinted first and background investigation, and then I took that to the state.
And then you took that to Oregon Health Authority, and they approved you. And then at what point did you come into city planning and say, I want a business license, and then this is what I want to do and where I want to do it?
Well, I didn't. I applied for so I got a city business license for wholesale manufacturing and retail of general merchandise excluding tobacco.
Okay, so
that
you-
was during the moratorium, and you were not issuing any business licenses.
So you didn't come out and say, my business is going, you gave the name of the business, and you were going to have manufacturing, and you were going to have wholesale and distributing and whatnot, but you never mentioned what the product was. So therefore, if you had, then I'm assuming that planning would have said, time out. Nobody knows where this marijuana thing is. I mean, this is fresh to all of us. This isn't just fresh. You know, the only person, there's a couple people in the room that have been at this a long, long time, but I'm not one of them. And, you know, maybe you are. But so, you know, bear with us when we have, and right now there's several sets of rules and regulations that we have to go. For crying out loud, the state of Oregon doesn't agree with the feds. So, you know, there's a big gray area out there that we're all wallowing around in. But you know, my concern is if you would have come in and said, you know, I'm going to do this, and it'll be an adult business, they could have stopped you right then. Don't go rent that place, because, you know, you go rent that place or lease that place, it is not going to qualify because of our code that's been in place for 10 years. I mean, we didn't just start making this up like a lot of people say, well, you're coming along making up the rules as you go. And this one has been in place for 10 years. So that's my concern there. That, first off, I wanted to know that did city staff do their job? And it sounds like they did, because they didn't know what you were up against or what you were going to do. And then, of course, when the state thing passed and you go, whoa, I'm in. And you come in, and then all of a sudden, whoops, that didn't happen.
Well, actually, I was ready to open, and Bartholomew called me and said, you know, you can't open, you don't have an adult business license. So that, I really wasn't, so I never did properly address it with planning, because I thought I had everything done with the state as I waited for
Right,
this moratorium to expire.
Well, and you know, and like I say, it takes a Mark Bartholomew to keep up with all these rules and regulations and laws for every little, you know, might be a neighborhood thing for all I know on some of these things. But so it's pretty tough, and you're probably way more versed in navigating those waters than we are. So, like I say, be patient with us up here as we're trying to wade through this thing and figure out what happened and what to do, because, you know, like I said, I'm going back to that 10 years this thing's been in place, and I understand your economic development, you know, your economic development thing, you know, but it would, an adult, you know, that I'm going to open a strip club and it's going to be good for college girls. You know, no, I'm just teasing. But anyway, I think that I really think the Oregon Health Authority, I think, really should have given you more information than they did did they take your money? I mean, is there money involved in the Oregon Health Authority?
It's $4,000 to license a year.
Ouch. I think they should have given you more information. I don't run the Oregon Health Authority. Our arm's reach only goes to the city limit.
Right,
So,
right.
so I thank you very much for coming in and stating your case. And I'm waiting to hear if many of my colleagues have any other questions.
Okay.
Ken?
Thank you for coming in and answering our questions. I've got 2 questions, and they're pretty simple. Were you ever made aware that this property would not be, or the type of business you wanted? Were you ever made aware by the city that it was not going to be able to be put there?
No, not until I was ready to open.
Oh, okay.
So
That-
I wasn't aware of it, and the city probably wasn't aware of me.
Okay. The second question is, were you ever shown where the business could be located if there wasn't a ban? I mean, we've seen a map where the businesses are eligible to be located, but were you ever shown that map?
No, I just saw that Monday for the first time. Before that, I just went with the zoning, the commercial restrictions set forth by the state when locating the property.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions for the applicant? Lily?
So I just want to clarify, you said that you're not open to the general public, but you intend to be as soon as the law allows you to be.
Yes, so, and again, to do that, I'd have to have the sign-off of the city manager on the OLCC license.
And I want to make sure I heard you correctly, that when you applied for the business, you did not disclose what your intention for the business was. You said you were simply there for manufacturing, retail, non-tobacco related. So had you put the information down on the original application of what your intended business was, you may have gotten an answer from the city sooner as far as the restrictions for adult use, since you didn't list the adult use that you intended.
Right, I was already licensed by the state and through the Secretary of State before I applied for the Grants Pass license.
So you knew what you intended to do, but did not put that down on the application for the business license.
There was no business code, so all that was on the application was the business code.
So you had a license for a medical dispensary, and you asked for a business license, but did not put medical dispensary down on the license application.
Correct. It was during the moratorium, and there was no business code for a medical marijuana facility.
So have you applied for a business license since the moratorium was up?
No.
So you're still basing it on the information that you gave ahead of time, that you were not intending to have marijuana activities on the property?
I never did state that I wasn't going to have medical marijuana
But
on
you
the
didn't put
property.
it on there because you knew there was a moratorium.
It was just a building code.
It's
I'm
just
sorry,
called-
a business code. There is no business code to put on the application to open a medical marijuana business.
So I'm just saying, okay, I see what you're saying. It's not a retail section, but at the same time, you knew there was a moratorium, so you didn't put, this is my type of business.
No, I just put the most general, descriptive business code that was available.
Okay.
Let me let Mark in here.
So just to respond to a couple of questions I've heard from council, staff was unaware of this business until I think I saw an ad in the paper. I called and I talked to Ms. Dean on the phone. She was very pleasant, and I think she truly was unaware of the special regulations regarding the adult business. But when I saw that she was planning to open, I mean, I felt like she needed to know that there were some impediments to opening. And so, I mean, called her right away at the first moment we heard about that. And I think Ms. Dean would agree with that statement.
Any other questions of the applicant? Well, thank you much for coming in. We will open it up to the public, and you'll have another chance to speak at the end.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So I would open it up to the public for comment on this matter, those that are for or against. Yes, sir.
Kurt Ramey, Grants Pass, Oregon. I would like a clarification. Is there property in the city limits or not? Because I am in the city limits, and so is Jim Clark's consignment. But I heard that it's not in the city limits. So what is the truth? Thank you.
Laura?
The subject property is inside the city limits. When they were referencing a different dispensary, that particular dispensary is on River Highway outside of the city limits. We will double check if there is an operation down the street that is in the city limits, but I'm not aware of one operating. So I don't have any further discussion on this subject, though.
Okay. From the applicant, any last comments?
No, just of course, with the medical, there is no taxation on it, so there has been no revenues generated from that for the state to disperse. But the rules came out for the rollout come January 1st, and the tax is now from 17 cents to 25%. So there is going to be a tax, to partake in for the cities that participate, and all of Eastern Oregon is pretty much already out of that, and with the dispensary operations here, we would qualify. So, and a lot of that goes to, I think 40% of that fund goes to recovery. So that was a big part of that too. But other than that, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, then I would close the public comment and return it to the council for decision and action. It is an appeal. Lily.
I first just want to address Ms. Dean and just say thank you for going through the proper channels, and even in dealing with Mr. Bartholomew, as he reported, that you've been gracious and professional in working with that and going through the proper channels here. I appreciate that as well. I am not somebody who this is not an easy one. Yes, I can say for certain we have not got every decision right that we have ever made. And we will continue to make decisions in the future, and I can guarantee we will not get every decision right in the future. So whether or not we did something in one circumstance or another circumstance it doesn't account for right now. We'll try to do our best right now. One thing I can say, though, is in driving in that area, it's an area that I've worked. I go back and forth in that area frequently. There is lots of kids in the neighborhood around there. Playford and Sunset, going back all the way back, all those side streets coming off of Rogue River Highway back towards the Parkway all have a lot of family homes and have a lot of kids in and out of there. You're also right that there's somewhat of a underdeveloped area in that section of Rogue River Highway right there that could use some boost. Whether or not certain want to be politicians in our community or extended community think they know what's best for Grants Pass, we're obligated to make rules and regulations based on the Grants Pass voters. And so, though I appreciate other people's opinions about our community, it doesn't represent Grants Pass. And Grants Pass, we've had the support of the community in the adult restricted zones, and that's, if I don't hit my chair in a sink, whew, that has been in place for a while. And yes, there's been little this and that's and quirks along the way. But the city of Grants Pass has been very clear on the adult use restrictions and other than that. I would be certainly happy to suggest that staff try to help you find a different location that would work, or if there's something that doesn't put you in the adult zone or in that specific realm. But I mean, it would seem that there are some properties that are not so far away from town that are still not in the city limits that would maybe meet your needs. I don't know what the county's restrictions are at this time, but I know what the city's restrictions are for adult use. And because of that, I think that it's pretty clear that something so close to a neighborhood that has kids playing in it as regularly as they are, there's not a single time I drive down those streets that I'm not slowing down because there's kids playing in those streets. And so to me, the fact that one property next door might not have a house on it, that is clearly still a residential area, and that is important to protect the kids in that community and the type of clientele that will be coming are adults that are not interested in what safety of the community in that neighborhood is going to be. So that's the comments I have for now. I will let the rest of y'all jump in.
I have Dennis and then Dan.
Yeah, I appreciate the, looking through the 100 pages or so that you submitted. I think you had a good business plan, you know. I think you took a lot of time to put it together. When you're dealing with security, for instance, you were trying to show how it was going to be secure. And I also agree with you, because it's in my ward, that area could use a boost, that's for sure. So I drive down Rogue River Highway every day, or at least once. But unfortunately, it just doesn't fall within our laws to grant an adult use facility there. And in addition, if you move past that, then you get into the dispensary ban, which we plan to put in front of voters later on, probably November 2016. But so voters will have their ultimate say in this thing. But unfortunately, it's going to be another year down the road. And like some of my fellow councilors have already said, this is already kind of a grab bag deal anyway. Nobody knows exactly what's going on, because everybody's got different rules, and the legislature makes this rule, and this city makes this rule, and it's just kind of a grab bag of laws right now, and we're just going to deal with what we have in Grants Pass. So I'm sorry that you got so far down the railroad here before you found out that wasn't going to work. So.
All right, Dan and then Mark, Rick.
Yeah, I wish you'd have done this 2 years from now, when everything's all cast in stone and brought down from the mountain. You know, then we'd all be able to. You'd probably have gotten your answers right upstairs. Like I say, one of the things that my concern is that you were not told wrong information by staff or anything of that sort, given the information that you provided for staff. I certainly understand where you said there was no box to check on the application, because I've gone through that when bidding some things for BLM. I didn't apply. I mean, my particular company, it wasn't on the map. I mean, so there was no box to check, so I just threw the thing in the trash barrel. But one of the things that and 2 years from now, we may, beg to have you here. I don't know where this Marijuana World thing's going to go. I've been waiting 17 years. I keep hearing about all the prosperity it's going to bring to the valley. And I keep hearing that $50 million worth of traffic in dope goes through Josephine County every year. Well, times 17, that's $850 million. And if I look at, and I've been on the budget committee for 5 years, I have not seen one line item that said, whoa, look at this, man. I saw nothing on there. And the same thing over in the county side. Now, I think you touched on a little bit that recreational marijuana will be able to be taxed by the state, but not by localities again, not by where we aren't going to be able to tax locally for that. And it'll go to the state, and then the state OLCC will trickle some back. And then you mentioned that it would go to a couple of programs and this and that and the other thing. Recovery is one of them, which is great for I don't know how you recover from medical marijuana, but I guess if you do, that's okay too. I think it's very good that some of it's going to go to recovery. But like I say, my major concern is that the process wasn't interrupted, and you didn't get treated any differently than anybody else who would have walked in with any other adult business, whether it been anything else. And one of the people that spoke said we made all kinds of concessions for this and that and the other thing. But I want to remind everybody that, like, as for the Grice family, they're what do you call those? The beer things. Growler, the growler business. Beer is legal, and it is legal. Marijuana is legal here, but beer is legal on a federal level. I think 2 years from now we're going to have all this. There'll be the moratoriums that have been thrown in the 11th hour stuff. Some of them are going to just die on the vine. And some of them on the vine, and some of them are probably going to be reenacted. So I don't know where we're at on this one here, but for right now, I just want to make sure that you had due process and that you didn't get bad information out of anybody up here and anybody on our staff. That's very important to this council, and I applaud staff for being straightforward on that. So I think there's a couple more people on the list up here, so I'll just zip it up.
Let me see, Mark and then Rick.
Yeah, thank you again for coming out and stating your case and for the professional way in that you've handled yourself in this whole matter with with the manager and with staff. That's not always the way these things go. And that is appreciated by everyone that works with you. And I think Dan hit it on the head. If you'd come over here in a couple of years, we're going to have a whole new set of rules, probably. We're going to have a whole new, I mean, the culture's changing on this. And not everybody is for it, but, and in fact, we have, like fellow councilors have alluded to, we're going to have a vote by the people here about dispensaries within the city limits. Because we have heard from them, and they've said that from the folks that we've spoke to, we don't want it here. We don't want it growing in our backyard, next door. We don't want all of these different things that are associated with it. And so, okay, let's have you vote on it. Let's have the people vote on it. Let's have them speak up and say exactly how do they want their city run. We hear that continuously through the different groups that we frequent, that we're members of, that we make outreaches to. I go to, I can't even tell you how many, different groups of folks, and they all know that I'm a city councilor, and they all know that I want to hear from them about any issue that they got. And I get it, I earful at times. But I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that they speak to me, and I appreciate the fact that you have spoken passionately about your desire to open up this business. And I applaud you for taking advantage of this situation where you can see a lucrative business thrive. Unfortunately, we are in a zone that is not allowable. And it's just not something that I think that we should make an exception for. Councilor Morgan has made a statement about the children in the area. I drive that strip, as I said earlier, quite often, and I see those kids myself, and I see the folks walking on the street, and it's just not it's zoned this way for a particular reason, and you have all these residences right behind it. I'm not willing to go forward with the appeal. But I do appreciate, as always, as I said, your candor and your decorum. Thank you very much.
Let's see, I have Rick and then Dan.
Tamara, thank you for your presentation. I feel you're very professional in the way you have come forward. And we as the council really appreciate that. One thing needs to be expressed is our authority comes from the Development Code, and tonight you've acknowledged your business is an adult business which limits access. It's subject to a 200-foot setback that's in the code to residential property. You've asked for relief and an exception, but you need to present evidence in that respect and adequately address the criteria, and that has not been done. Also, you have not requested a change in the ordinance, but as Councilor Gatlin said, over time this may occur, as Dan Young also said. Also, there's no presentation to legal references in that you're asking for relief. That would be another thing to include. And it's been acknowledged the avenue of a variance is not available for this situation. So given all those factors, I would also be affirming the hearing officer's decision. Thank you.
Roy, then Jim.
It's my understanding that there is an ordinance already on the books that bans medical marijuana dispensaries in Grants Pass. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So in order to even proceed logically and process-wise with this request, it would seem to me that that ordinance would have to be either rescinded or modified in some way, shape, or form before I could even consider making a variance possible. It seems to me that definitely this council is riding a roller coaster between all kinds of rules and regulations and laws that are coming at us from all different directions. And we're trying very, very diligently and very, very carefully to make sure that we respect the rights of all people as much as possible, and at the same time follow those laws and regulations to the best of our ability. So it would seem to me that because we already have on the books a ban for what you intend to use that building for, I'm going to vote for affirming the hearing officer's conclusion. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, I would echo what Councilor Lindsay just said. I was going to make a comment about that. And I know this timeline doesn't work very well for you as the applicant, but I believe this council is pretty committed to putting these issues to a vote. That is about 14 months away, and I think we will live with whatever that decision is and balance out our ordinances and do housekeeping accordingly. But just to address the issue of fairness, well, number one, I don't think this council can be held to the actions of a previous council that did, in fact, modify a park for a specific reason. That wasn't this council. But to grant a business within 1,000 feet of the park that was created for that purpose, that gets far more use from our local transients than children, and I know this because I work right next to it, is different than comparing it to a business that is within 200 feet of, and I'm taking a guess, Laura, probably 30 to 50 residential properties. What would be compelling to me would be each and every one of those property owners saying, no, we would be for this. That would be information that I think this council would have to weigh if 100% of those property owners, which these rules are meant to protect, would be for it. Unfortunately, the young lady that owns a business that came up and spoke against it, it's not 200 feet from businesses or retail, it's 200 feet from residential zones where people live and raise their families. So that's the type of information we would need, I would need, in order to seriously consider this, because those are the folks and the families and the private property rights that these things are meant to protect. So those are my comments.
Dan?
You know, looking at the economic development side, I am really just floored at how the county, and there's been a lot of county residents come in here and talk about medical marijuana and recreational marijuana and growing marijuana, harvesting it, planting it indoors, outdoors, inside the city limits. It just floors me how they're letting this best-kept secret in the whole Pacific Northwest leak out of Josephine County and into the city. They're, you know, trying to force feed that industry onto the citizens of Grants Pass, but they've got to do that through the council, and the council has the rules that we have to go by. So that makes it uncomfortable all the way around. And I, you know, you've handled yourself very well. You're very well spoken, and you know exactly, and you've answered every question that we've had, and we've had a bunch. So I'm going to, well, let's see, this is a
Just a motion. We'd make
Motion?
it sounds like we're headed towards the motion to affirm the director's